Tesla stock makes absolutely no sense, and I'm here to prove it to you. Let's go ahead and get started. Now, first and foremost, this is not financial advice. This is just my thoughts and how I think about the company, its stock, and its future potential. And to make sure we're both on the same page, I've been a stockholder since 2012. I worked at the company from 2017 through 2021, and I've owned Teslas exclusively really since 2016. However, it's super important that you always do your own research, and I'm just here, just a random guy on the internet, providing you my thoughts and how I'm thinking about the company and its stock. What really started this thought process in my head over the weekend is that we're getting a bunch of positive news around the Tesla story. Here's a picture from Joe Tegmeyer on Twitter, or X, I should say. Thank you very much, Joe. 9 Cybertrucks under the worst, the worst possible covers in the world. I wonder what kind of car this would be, right? Here's a side shot from those same exact vehicles, and here's additional footage of the Cybertruck. There were 5 Cybertrucks found in New Zealand, testing in the snow and whatnot, and here's one on a Tesla Semi being carried around. All of this to say is that Cybertruck is imminent. Cybertruck is a product from Tesla that is highly, really sought after since its unveil in 2019. Regardless of what you think of how the car looks, this is obviously going to bring a ton of attention to the company once it hits the roads en masse. Then there's another set of data that came over the weekend, which is Tesla has 60% of the total market share in the United States from January through June. And so if we compare that to Chevy, that's 6.2%, Ford 5.1%. But I think the big takeaway here is that Tesla sells 6 times more EVs than the Detroit 3 combined. One company in the United States sells 6 times more EVs than the other 3 major automakers in the same country combined. And also important to keep in mind that this is before the Cybertruck that we just talked about is released, and Tesla releases their $25,000 compact car, much rumored to start hitting the streets sometime around 2025, maybe even 2026. Now here's another bit of news from Tesla's primary competitor in the United States. This is the CEO of Ford, Jim Farley, talking about how he's going on a road trip with the Ford product and that he's experiencing some challenges from the current charging infrastructure in Electrify America. And he highlighted why they're working with Tesla to make the charging experience much better. But the bigger takeaway here is that a legacy automaker essentially says Tesla has the best charging network. If you have an EV, go with a Tesla supercharger. So to kind of put these thoughts together as we enter the end of Q3, or really exit Q3 is probably a better way of saying that, Cybertruck delivery event, we just talked about endless Cybertruck content, of course, as those things are launched. A lot of people are going to be taking videos and posting them online. Who knows how many rap videos we'll get with that car in there. It's going to be sick. The Model 3 refresh, full self-driving version 12. So if you follow the Tesla story closely, this is that version that Tesla's going to have that's going to be ruled by artificial intelligence, which theoretically should dramatically improve the performance of the software. You have Giga Mexico, which is Tesla's Mexican factory that's going to go live, that's going to start producing that $25,000 car we just covered. And so it feels like momentum is building for the Tesla story. A lot of positive news over the weekend. One would think once you go into Monday morning, the stock would perform in a positive manner, especially in the short term, since so many good things are happening. However, one piece of news came out, which is that Tesla China has announced it has lowered the price of the Model Y long range and performance vehicles by about $2,000 USD. And if we look at that from a percentage perspective, that's about a 5% price decrease versus the full price of the vehicle in China. Another key thing to remember, though, is that this price decrease, so for the performance and the long range, apply to only 18% of Tesla China Model Y volume. Thank you, Gary Black on X, for bringing this to our attention. So you think about this 5% drop on about 18% of the Chinese volume. So if you do the total math, this is less than 10% of the total volume for Tesla. And then you look at the stock today and it's down 1.5 points. And if you look at it this morning, it was down as low as 3.5, 4 points before the market opened. But after we went through all those things that happened for Tesla that are quite material, that happened over the weekend that are very positive, and the stock goes down, it's making one thing painfully clear for me at least, and that's vehicle autonomy, which is Tesla's self-driving software, is not priced into the stock. And so this video is going to really cover why that is in detail, because otherwise we shouldn't be seeing this kind of move, or the stock should be performing differently. As we go through the video, let me know in the comments if you agree or disagree with me. But let's go ahead and dig into why I think this is the case. And if you're enjoying this content so far, give me a like. It helps the YouTube algorithm show this to more people. So Tesla has a goal of 20 million cars per year by 2030. A lot of people say this is a crazy goal. So okay, let's give that to the folks that maybe are doubting that. Let's cut it in half, and let's assume Tesla gets to 10 million units by 2030 per year. This is a chart of what that would look like from a sales perspective. This red line is how much Tesla is selling every single year. And you can see by 2030 mark, they'll be at 10 million units sold. But the key thing that I really want you to focus on is this fleet size. A fleet size basically is how many Teslas are on the road, how many total cars Tesla has sold up through 2030. And you can see that even if they reach half of their target by 2030 of 10 million, the fleet size by 2030 is much closer to 38 million units. And so if they reach half their goal by 2030, that means 38 million Teslas on the road by that year. Now, in case you're not familiar, Tesla is working on a full self-driving software solution that's going to allow every Tesla vehicle to drive itself without a driver sometime in the next couple years, very similar to what you see in places like San Francisco, Austin, and other areas from providers like Cruise or Waymo. Basically, what it means is that there'll be no driver required anymore. The cars will drive themselves, and every car sold right now from Tesla has the hardware necessary to achieve this, and all they need is a software update. Now, once Tesla achieves self-driving by 2030, let's assume by then 20% of Tesla's purchase in that year will buy this full self-driving software at $21,000. That will allow them to either operate it for their own self, just driving around, or rather the car driving them around town, or they can add it to the fleet where they can potentially generate money from that car, just like an Uber. So let's say 10% of the fleet by 2030 is part of this robotaxi fleet of this Tesla network where people can just hail a car and it will come pick them up without a driver. And under that scenario, let's do some very simple math on how much it would potentially cost. Let's say $1 per mile. Let's say Tesla keeps 20% of that dollar, so they keep 20 cents on every dollar that somebody spends to get driven around. And let's say the average robotaxi does about 20,000 miles per year. Now, if I look at the dollar per mile, that's significantly less than an Uber, where it's much closer to $1.08, even $2 in a lot of cases. Tesla taking home 20% is less than what Uber takes home from a driver, and 20,000 miles per year seems like a very conservative estimate on how much, let's say, a taxi driver would drive their car per year. I know people that drive way more than that without even being a taxi driver. So I feel like these numbers are pretty conservative and realistic. Now, if we put all those numbers together, this equals to $50 billion in profit in 2030 at 100% margin. And the reason why it's 100% margin is, again, this is a software update. Tesla has already sold the cars with the hardware. The cost is baked into making the car for that hardware, for the camera system and the computer. And so the $50 billion in profit that comes from the software should be 100% margin. It just flows to the bottom line because they've already baked in all the costs into the cars today. If we apply a very conservative price to earnings ratio that's really saved for large companies that aren't growing really fast of 20 price earnings, this equals to about $1.14 trillion in market cap. However, this begs the question. If Tesla was going to solve autonomy, where is the market cap today? If we look at the price for Tesla stock today, it's $238, and the car business, the energy business, and whatever else they're working on is at $756 billion of value for the company. That 1.1 number we just went through is strictly from software sales. It doesn't include any other sales from the company. So one would have to ask the question, where is the market cap for that autonomy? Now let's go ahead and look at it from a different perspective that I think is really going to drive home the point that this is not baked into the stock price. So let's go back to the example that Sawyer had around the price decrease in China, where Tesla had about a $2,000 decrease or 5%. This chart describes how much a Model Y made in China costs and how much profit it's likely to bring in to Tesla for every one they sell. We can assume that it costs Tesla about $32,000 to manufacture, and then once they sell the car, they make about $8,000 of profit on it, which is about 20% margin, which is how much Tesla's making today. Now you can see that after you take that $2,000 price cut, the profit goes from $8,000 to $6,000. So it still costs you $32,000, but you lose $2,000 of profit. Now the way of thinking about it is that 25% of the profit is gone after that price decrease. However, here's what it looks like with autonomy. And this is why I think anytime there's an announcement like this that a price decrease has occurred and the stock goes down, that they're not looking at it from this perspective. Let's go ahead and take the same exact assumptions as we had before. FSD at $21,000 to purchase the software, charging $1 per mile for somebody to ride hail a full self-driving Tesla. Tesla takes home about 20%, and the robotaxi operates 20,000 miles per year. Now, the key thing here to keep in mind is that this car is not just going to operate for 1 year. This car is going to operate over 10 years at least. This is the average length of operation of any car out there today. It's about 10 years. Some people like to keep their cars for like 3 or 4 years, but most people keep their cars for at least 10 years, especially if you're a business. And so after we take into account how much profit the car will generate over time, this is what the new chart looks like. You still give up the $2,000 from the price decrease, and instead of making $8,000, you made $6,000 on the profit of the car. But in reality, you also have to add on top of that the $21,000 that Tesla's going to charge you for purchasing the software, and the $40,000 Tesla will make over the course of 10 years for taking a 20% cut for every single ride that's done on their network. This is the correct way of looking at the profitability of a car within the context of a price reduction for a Tesla. And so within that context, each car brings in $87,000 in profit over the life of the vehicle on a car that costs $32,000 to manufacture. So think about how much a 5% decrease on a $40,000 car really means when the car is bringing in over $67,000 in profit over the course of the vehicle. Seems pretty small, doesn't it? Another way of thinking about it is that the car is going to bring in 2 times in profit alone versus how much it costs to make the car. This equals about 67% margins on a car, which is absolutely ridiculous. And that cost decrease impact of 25% to the total cost of the vehicle goes down by over 92%. And I'm sure it's very clear to see when there's a $2,000 price decrease on a car that doesn't have autonomy, it seems like a lot, but then you compare it to how much the car can bring in over 10 years and it becomes so small, basically insignificant within the whole picture of what Tesla's going to be able to do from a profit perspective. But here's the thing, this is using some pretty conservative numbers, in my opinion, if autonomy were to be solved. Let's go ahead and take it further based on what Tesla says is going to happen in the next 5 to 10 years. And let's think about this within the context of Tesla's compact car / robotaxi that's really designed to take the company to its targeted volume of 20 million cars per year by 2030. Under this scenario, let's assume that this $25,000 compact car takes about $20,000 to produce because it's going to be much smaller and much cheaper to produce using their latest manufacturing processes and so on, whatever Tesla figures out how to do. And now that we know that a fleet runner can take home a ton of money from running a car in its robotaxi fleet, it becomes obvious that Tesla is going to charge a lot more than $20,000 for that software. Let's assume it's about $40,000 for the same software. And let's also say that someone's going to run it for about 40,000 miles per year instead of 20,000, which is way closer to real life right now. A lot of taxi drivers, a lot of people that own cars that they use for Uber, they're much closer to this number than the 20,000 mile number, especially here in the United States. Let's keep it at the same dollar per mile figure and a 20% take home for Tesla. And so from that perspective, on the left here is how much Tesla would take home with a compact car under those assumptions versus an existing Model Y made in China under the old assumptions. Now, the reason why it's important to look at it this way is because Tesla is manufacturing a car that's specifically used to solve the robotaxi variable. It's not going to be a Model Y or Model 3. It's going to be a brand new vehicle that's going to be designed from the ground up to be run for hundreds, potentially million miles plus, and it's ready to serve people in a robotaxi driverless sort of network. So the profit to Tesla per car sold goes from $67,000 to $125,000 in profit per vehicle over 10 years. And under that scenario, the fleet runner, so the person who's purchased the robotaxi and the software, takes home $40,000 per year per robotaxi instead of $20,000 per year because they're running it twice as long, much closer to what Uber drivers and other fleet runners are doing today with their vehicles. And so even when full self-driving is $40,000, FSD will still pay for itself in 1 year because the utilization of the car is much closer to reality than the 20,000 mile figure we used earlier. And if we take this scenario, we still assume that Tesla will miss its 2030 target by half, and they do 10 million units in 2030 at a 20 price earnings multiple, which is the same conservative number we used previously. That equals to $2.4 trillion in market cap from autonomy alone. Remember, today's market cap is closer to $750 billion. So the question becomes, where is this market cap? And if Tesla were to hit its 20 million goal per year by 2030, then the same math becomes about $4 trillion in market cap from autonomy alone. And so the question becomes again, Where is this market cap? But let's take it even further. I'm sure that Tesla's not going to stop manufacturing cars by 2030. They're not just going to shut down all the plants once they hit their goal. They're like, screw it, we're done. We hit it. Fire everybody. They're going to keep making cars. Is Tesla going to stop manufacturing cars in 2030? My guess is no. And so let's extrapolate that into the future. Let's assume Tesla hits its goal of 20 million cars per year, and they just continue making 20 million cars per year every single year up to through 2035. You can still see that the Tesla fleet, because you're adding more and more cars to the fleet, is growing significantly year over year over year over year over year. Tesla's pumping out more cars, but the previous cars don't disappear. You add more and more robo-taxi capable cars to the fleet. So much so that the fleet will triple in 5 years' time as long as you're making 20 million cars per year. So you go from about 50 million cars in the fleet to 150 million cars in the fleet. And so under that scenario, when we've tripled our size of the fleet, where is the market cap? And so from my perspective, based on how the stock performed this morning and the news cycle that happened over the weekend and how the stock reacted to the price decrease announcement in China, in my opinion, it's obvious Wall Street doesn't believe Tesla is achieving autonomy. And so hypothetically speaking, if this gap does exist where Wall Street doesn't think it's going to happen, but Tesla will actually solve autonomy, then wouldn't this mean Tesla's stock is dramatically undervalued? Not financial advice. Do whatever you want. These are just the questions I ask myself. And really the bigger question becomes, if it's not Tesla, what other player can solve autonomy? There was some big breaking news over the weekend where the GM Cruise vehicles, which is GM's self-driving division, basically held up an entire corner in San Francisco because the cars didn't know what to do. And the reason why was because they lost internet connection with the tower. And so now to fix that problem, Cruise is looking to install its own cellular tower network to mitigate the risk of network overload. But the question becomes, is this a scalable approach? Is one of Tesla's competitors adding a tower to every city it operates in a good approach to solve autonomy when they're already losing money on their product? The key thing to remember here is that players like Cruise, Waymo, and others are using a host of different sensors, including LiDAR, sonar, radar. I don't even know how many DARs they're using, and they're using HD maps. So they have to map every single city to make sure that every corner and every road and every sign and every cone exists thereafter so that the car doesn't crash into it. And in the case of Cruise, it's also connected to the internet. So having access to internet is also very important. However, in the case of Tesla, they don't need any of that. They have 8 cameras and a computer in the car, and that's it. And it doesn't have to be connected to be able to operate in full self-driving. So from that perspective, doesn't Tesla's approach seem a lot more scalable once they solve autonomy? And the other big piece is what other players can put 40 million robotaxis on the road by 2030? Solving the autonomy piece is one, but then making the cars that can actually drive themselves is the other one. And I don't know of any other company that can crank out as many cars as Tesla can. And so after all of this, all these numbers, all this hopefully logical reasoning, I just have one question for you. Am I crazy? Am I crazy? Am I thinking about this incorrectly? Am I being way too optimistic? What am I missing? Please let me know in the comment section below, in the replies below if you're watching this on X, and just let me know. Let me know if I'm thinking about this incorrectly. And of course, again, lastly, this is not financial advice. I'm just being very transparent in how I'm thinking about this company and its stock performance. If you'd like to support the channel, super easy, click subscribe. About 68% of you are not subscribed. I appreciate every single one of you that watch my videos. Thank you so much. And if you want to go above and beyond, I have merch and athletic greens in the description below. AG1 is a supplement I use every single morning, and you'll get free travel packs and vitamin D with your purchase. Thank you so much for watching. I hope this was informative and helpful, and we'll see you on the next one. Take it easy, everybody. Bye-bye.